Hi, and welcome to today's installment of the Data Visualization Society's Viz Responsibly series. I'm Amanda Makulec, the Operations Director for the Data Visualization Society, and I'm excited to be joined here today by Youyou Zhou. She's a data and visual journalist, most recently with Quartz, and she's here to talk to us today about some of her work as a data journalist, both related to COVID-19, but really zooming out and focusing more on how many of the complexities and challenges that we face working with and visualizing data extend far beyond any one data set or any one big global event. So Youyou, excited to have you here today.
Really happy to be here. Hello.
Excellent. So can you just tell me a bit about your background and what brought you into data journalism, and as you describe, being both a data and visual journalist?
Yes, so I studied journalism in college. I went to a college in China and a college in the U.S. In the U.S. I went to University of Missouri to study journalism. And after I graduated in 2012, it was not the best time to find a job. I worked my first job out of college as a data visualization agency, at a data visualization agency in DC, because there was no like journalism jobs for foreigners. Um, and so at the place, I actually got into data and visualization and all the technical aspects of journalism that I later brought back into journalism. So like I did a lot of work with R, cleaning data, analyzing data, doing data visualization, sketching out stuff, using D3, using JavaScript coding on the web. So I did all these things at the agency. And later on, I really wanted to do journalism. I went back to apply for jobs, and I got my job at the interactive department at the Associate Press, and worked there for about 3 years, and did the whole 2016 presidential election cycle. And then I moved from the AP to Quartz and worked as a things reporter, basically a data and visual journalist at Quartz for another 3 years. So that's
Very
basically
cool.
my experience in data journalism.
I'm always happy to hear when people got to spend time in the lovely Midwest. I'm from Illinois, so there's a piece of me that's always happy when those Midwestern states pop up when I'm chatting with people.
Yeah, it's
Now,
very important. It doesn't pay enough attention to them.
no, it's a lovely space. So I know that we recently did an article and a profile on a lot of your great work and your reflections on that, especially the last few months on our publication Nightingale. And you reflected on COVID, saying that data all of a sudden became so interesting to people who hadn't felt that way before, which really kind of was interesting to me because it speaks to the fact that it maybe started or kicked off a culture shift towards looking more at data and a broader group of people focusing on and looking at data. So what do you think made this moment in time really unique, especially for data journalists, but also for the people consuming that information?
Mhm. Because of my work, I monitor a lot of data sets, and also I talk with people in talk with reporters and editors on different beats about story ideas all the time, how we can use data to visualize different aspects of our lives. And what I have seen is things have all changed because of the pandemic. So if you think of the food you eat, the pantries, like any, or if you think of the curtain at home, like it's home improvement. More people want to improve their homes, do more home furnishing during the pandemic. So any object, even the smallest one in your life, has been changed in some way because of the pandemic, and that's reflected in the data. So data becomes so interesting in the past half year, and there are government reports, there are regular releases from different agencies of the government, like food price, employment rate, population figures, even like on foreigner levels in the US. All these numbers changed dramatically just in the past few months. And if you just look at the data, oh, there are stories everywhere. And I think that, and when you chart or plot out these numbers, they look curious. They make interesting bar charts. They look interesting. They make interesting line charts. So they become the abundance of abnormal data make readers curious about what's happening and make people pay more attention to data. And I think the other thing that's also making data journalism very important at this moment is people want information. Like they feel at a loss. They didn't know how this virus they didn't know what we can do. We still don't know where this is going. So we want some concrete information, and data provides this channel for people to see projections, see models, see the case numbers, the death numbers. So it gives people a sense of certainty in terms of the trajectory. So it is a very important way for people to calm down and to understand what's going on right now. So data is both, I would say, important and curious in this moment. And that makes people outside the data journalism field pay a lot of attention to data and to data journalism.
Well, so picking up on two kind of key themes that you just pointed to there. One, just this hunger for information, especially about cases, but that case data having a lot of uncertainty and data quality issues for various different reasons that we could probably spend an hour digging into. But then also thinking about the fact that that's not the only data people are looking at right now. There's also all of this other data about mobility and spending and finance and the economy and all these different things. I think one of my favorites that I saw was some information from Yelp about what people were searching for. And there was a significant increase in people looking for puppies and pet stores. But seeing kind of how that data looks and how that other data and information helps us explain and understand what's happening in the world around us. Even that data has its own kind of caveats and constraints. When you look at, say, the Google mobility reports, and there's a bunch of notes about what's comparable or not and why the different measures are different. And so I'm wondering, as we think about the reality that data has many nuances and in some places real data quality concerns, known or unknown, how do you really ensure that uncertainty is reflected in visualizations that are designed to be read by a wide public audience?
Yeah, that's something I think a lot about, especially now, because like I think as a journalist, not as someone who's just like a regular data visualization practitioner, it is the journalist's job to get the point across. So when we write a story, we want to know what is the message we want audience to get away with. And it's usually not a very nuanced, complete picture of everything. So we want to deliver the message, but we also want to make sure when we deliver the message, people don't lose the entire picture. And I think it is a very tricky balance that we as a data journalist, I am personally trying to pay more attention to, especially now. I felt like I wasn't paying enough attention to before, and now looking at so many different stories other people have done and stories that courts and the publication I worked for have done, I feel like we can do better on that.
It's a big challenge, right? I mean, I think that that's one of the hot topics, even coming out of Tapestry a couple of years ago, was this question of how do we visualize uncertainty when creating data visualizations implies a certain amount of objectivity or truthiness to what you're presenting.
Yes, I think like I've seen, I think a few people, I cannot call them correctly. Is that Lena Gregor? They have done very long posts about visually how you can visualize uncertainty. I think maybe more specific to this pandemic, some of the ways I've seen people that have done pretty successfully is to combine a few different metrics or like combine a few different methodologies when they are trying to talk about a single topic. So when we show like case numbers of or death numbers or testing rate or death rate, each individual matrix is not perfect. But if we were able to combine a few matrices together, that's like a more accurate picture of the situation. And the other thing, I remember a project I saw from Kevin Curry at the New York Times. So lots of organizations have done have done stories visualizing people movements of people based on based on cell phone data. And cell phone data has its own biases, like where you want to show movements of people of high income groups and movements of people of low income groups. Cell phone data, there might be fewer cell phone usage in low income communities than high income communities. And one way Kevin did that story is he got the same data from 3 different cell phone companies, and then he visualized how they track movements differently. And even there are differences, together they all tell the same story. So we can say this conclusion that social distancing is a privilege is solid. So I think one way we can we need to be more mindful of the data sources, also the methodologies we use. But it sometimes makes me feel like it is like literature review in academia journals. So if you were able to just be more rigorous of the process and show different methods that lead to the same takeaway, then you can confidently say the takeaway is solid.
Well, this idea of kind of triangulating information and pulling it all together, I know that part of that is oftentimes done in newsrooms through teamwork, right? And as a data journalist, you're oftentimes part of a wider team. So when you are in conflict with or disagree with one of your colleagues, how do you actually resolve some of those issues, especially if you're, say, collaborating with a team who isn't as data savvy, but are writing the copy or the headlines for the article? How do you go ahead and resolve conflict and work effectively with those other parts of your team?
I think it's usually, of course, it depends on the team and the newsroom culture. But I felt like the first thing I would do is to be open-minded and try to have a conversation with the stakeholders, and then like see what are their concerns. Because sometimes even if someone proposed, oh, you should do it this way, or the text should be written this way, or the headline needs to be written this way, they have an issue they wanted to address, and it may not be best addressed in the way they suggested. The suggestion they suggested. But if I understand the issue, then I can propose a different way of addressing it that also address my concern. So I really think it is more of a communication issue than a value proposition. And I think at the end of the day, we are all journalists, and there are certain values that we all agreed upon, and we want to say convey information as accurately as possible, serve our audience. And if the goal is the same, I think how we work towards the goal can be talked about and negotiated.
I think that that's great advice for anyone on any team, even if you're not in a newsroom, right? In terms of starting from a place of empathy and communication and understanding, and then trying to move into trying to figure out what actually goes on that page or what goes on that website once the final copy gets produced. I think it's great advice. So as we go ahead and wrap up today, we want to wrap up as we do with each of our episodes of this session. And we'd love to know from you, what does the phrase "viz responsibly" mean to you as a data journalist?
Yeah, I think this meant, let me think. I didn't prepare this question very well. So let me think. How would I answer it? How did other people answer it?
Wide variance. You know, some of us, when I think about visualizing data responsibly, I think about always probing and understanding the underlying data sources, but also the people represented. As other people, it's a very big focus on equity and kind of making sure that we always take an equity lens to visualizing data and information and look for bias. It varies a lot.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I can answer this.
All right, let's pause and I'm going to ask it again, and then we'll go ahead and I'll have Elijah cut. All right.
Thank you.
So to wrap up and close our session today, we want to ask you the same question we ask everyone as we wrap up. What does the phrase "viz responsibly" mean to you as a data and visual journalist?
Yes. Okay. I think I tend to think a lot about when I visualize data or when I collect data, who are the people behind the data? So like because sometimes like the best data journalism is not just to visualize the data, but also to report the stories of the humans behind the data points. So sometimes we would try very hard to find a representative human being behind the data point and to find the community that we are talking to. Like when we display the data, who are we talking to? Who are we making a conversation with, and who are we representing? So just be mindful that each data point, when you think of employment, when you think of circular cell phone data on human movements, when you think of migrant laborers, when you think of some of the vulnerable communities, or even when you think of economic data, like on food price, each data point affect real human beings. And I think when you think this way, when you think of the stakeholders who will be actually impacted because of your story, you tend to be more responsible of the way you tell the story. And I think that's really important as a data journalist, is not to just convey findings, but also think of the underlying people and why the data is this way. Sometimes the data is only this way because of systematic bias in collecting the data, and are you just reinforce that bias? So it like really think of the people and understanding them and understanding how the data is collected and represented will change, and is very important to me and to other, I think, to the whole industry.
So I think that that's great advice for anyone working in data visualization, especially in the public space when you're publishing things that anyone can read. It has been a delight to chat with you today, Yo-Yo. I really appreciate your time and willingness to share some of your insights from your work. Where can people find you if they want to follow your work or see your kind of designs and visualization?
Yes, I think the best place to find my work and follow me is on Twitter. I am on Twitter as Z as a zero, HOYOYO. And thank you so much, Amanda. I really had a good conversation with you today.
Thank you again. Signing off for now with this episode of Viz Responsibly with Youyou Zhou. It's been a pleasure to chat with you today, and we'll see you again next time.
Thank you. Bye.